Hello, Mastertron Tamer here. We're going to be working with an antique appliance. Before we do, let me tell you a quick story. When I was a young boy, I used to run around and play a lot, like most young people do. And one day I was at my grandmother's house, and I was crawling around underneath her dining room table. When I looked up at the dining room table, I noticed there was an electrical outlet of an older variety attached to it. And I was perplexed by this. So I asked her, I said, why is there electrical wiring in the dining room table? And she said, oh, that belonged to your great-grandfather. Your great-grandfather, who was head of electrical engineering at Purdue University for many decades. In fact, I think is still the longest serving person in that job. He wanted to have hot toast at his table. So he wired his dining room table so that he could work with one of the modern appliances of the time, which was a toaster. And that's what's kind of inspired me to work with this one. So I have an example of a toaster from that era that they used. Now, I did want to give you a few safety precautions before we work with this. I'm also an electronics and an electrical engineer myself, so I feel somewhat qualified to work with something like this. If you weren't, you need to understand there's severe risk. For instance, electrical shock, burn, possibly even death if you don't know what you're doing, because these appliances were much more dangerous than the ones we have today. The ones we have today you can still hurt yourself with. Some people probably remember this little clip.
Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die.
You know, we can take a knife and stick it in a modern toaster and electrocute yourself pretty easily. Well, it's just that it was easier to do with this kind of appliance because, to be honest, they hadn't made them quite as safe back then. So let me show it to you a little bit real quick before we get going. So the way it worked is it opened up like this. This one was made by Westinghouse. You put a piece of bread in there. There are heating elements in the middle, and you would put the bread in, put it in like this, and you would cook one side of the bread. And this particular model was called a flip over toaster because when you would open it up, it would flip the bread over so that you could put it back and cook the other side. Now, I mean, we can kid that maybe they just hadn't thought about the idea that you could put heating elements on both sides of the bread and not have to cook them separately. But I really don't think that's what was going on here. I think with early wiring in homes, they were very cognitive of having too much wattage. So this particular type of toaster probably draws about half the current of a modern toaster. This would make it more compatible with some of the early home wiring of the day. I think they were just trying to be careful with what they did. Now, some of the models of these had very elaborate mechanisms for flipping the bread around. One that kind of went in a circle like this, and I've looked at a few of these. This is probably something that the average person would buy and probably cost $1 or $2 at the time in the money of the day. All right. Again, going back to safety though, I have very carefully inspected this toaster. I've looked at all the wiring. I have particularly looked at the insulators to make sure they were sound. But I want to show you some of the things that I did to double check this. So I measure the resistance between the two power plugs, and it's coming up a little over 20 ohms, 21.5 or 6. The other thing that's a really important measurement is to measure from each of the pins to the case to make sure we don't have a hot case. And that's good. The cord that I'm going to be using actually needed to be repaired, and I have a video of that repair for you to take a look at. We're going to go ahead and change out a cord. So this is an old power appliance heating cord. This is probably a period plug that goes on here. And what you can probably see here is that they've gone ahead and wrapped the cord around these prongs to put them on the screw. Now, I think I know why they did that, because that would give it some more strain relief. But there's supposed to be an insulator that goes on top of here, and they've left those screws exposed, and it's quite possible that while plugging it in, you could get a really bad shock. So this has got to go. We're going to bring that up to standard and put a proper end on it. So let's go ahead and do that. I wanted to point out that the one I'm using is rated at 15 amps, and that is double what I'm expecting the appliance to draw, so we should be good. And heating appliances like this one require special wires, special plugs, and I think we're all good there. So let's take it apart. There's one side. There's the other. So I'm going to go ahead now and straighten that out and pull it through. Now, I have just noticed that there is a crack in this insulation right here. So that's got to go, and there's a crack right here as well. So I'm going to have to cut that part off anyways. I've inspected the whole rest of it, and it looks good to me. So we're just going to cut these bad parts off. Now, one of the other problems with this style plug is there's no place to pull it on and off, which is one of the reasons they probably put that knot in it in the first place. The one I'm replacing it with has a hood on it that has a place to grip it to unplug it. All right, so let's go ahead and put this in. So we need to switch to Phillips. All right, and we'll need to put the wire on this terminal. Now, I left a bit of the damaged wire on here on purpose, and I'll show you why I did that. But first, let's pull it through the hood. That's a mistake many people have made, is to not put the wire through first. And this is very thick wire, so it is being a little bit stubborn and going through. There we go. So I left some of this old bad wire on here because what I want to do, the instructions here say to give us about 5/8 of an inch of wire. Well, I'm going to do just a little bit more than that. Because of the age of this wire, it's actually got cloth threads in it, but that's not going to hurt anything we're doing. What we'll do is strip both ends down. And get rid of these cloth cords. We'll need to nip those off. So if you're working on a plug on a modern thing, you probably won't run into these like I am. And being careful not to clip the wire. All right, so we've got rid of the cloth. It wasn't 100% necessary, but we're going to get a better contact with our wire. And like I said, we want to get the absolute most number of strands, so we want to be super careful not to cut any of them. All right, so this is supposed to come in under here and then go around this screw. And I'm going to pull it all the way out. And actually, I am right about the right length for this. And making sure that this has been pulled snug. And we don't want any little stray strands coming out under here that will get into trouble. This yellow piece of plastic in the middle is an extra insulator to try and keep these two pieces apart. We want to work with that too. And we need to carefully inspect it, again, for there being no stray strands. And to tighten this, I'm going to switch back. It actually has a square drive, which makes the Phillips not work so good. Okay, I don't see any, but I'm going to give myself an extra check. I don't see any loose strands. I don't see anything that's going to cause us trouble. And I'm also looking to make sure all the strands are under the screw. Then we just need to pull it into the plug housing. And screw it in. And we're good. And we can plug that in and pull that out safely now. And that'll be good. Now, it doesn't hurt to give one last check with this. I mean, I carefully, visually inspected it. But putting a meter on there before you plug it in, that's a good idea too. Because you should have continuity to the other end and not to each other. So that's kind of a last check that you might want to do. But that's all you need to do. It needed to be fixed up. I have since double checked it as well with the ohm meter, checking that there's no shorts between the pins and that they both are not resistive. So that all looks good. And because I'm able to give it a good inspection and a good electrical inspection, I feel it's safe to move forward. But I did want to point out some of the safety problems. First of all, burns. Very, very easy to get burnt with this because you can just stick your fingers right on these wires right here. And these are not the electrified wires, but even still, they get really hot. And then, of course, there's an electrocution risk. These early appliances aren't polarized at all. That means the plug can go in either way. Both of these can go in either way. So that means hot can be connected to either side. You just have no way of knowing. So again, getting anything metallic or your finger, heaven forbid, because then you're going to get electrocuted and burned at the same time, you could have a serious problem. Like I said, I think people were just cautioned when they used an appliance like this to keep their fingers out of it. But I think the modern version is quite a lot better. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can actually get this to do what it's supposed to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug in, and this was a very common way of heating appliances, plugging in the day. And they used special cord that was heat resistant, and it would plug all the way in, just like that. And of course, I'm doing that while it's unplugged. Okay, once I've got it the way I want it, let me move the meter out of the way now that we've safely tested it. We've got that in, we could plug it in. But first, let's try out the bread thing. So I was playing with this earlier, I have to admit. And I found that if I did this, if I put them in effectively upside down initially and brought it in, let that cook. When I'm done and I pull it down, they flop down. And then you put them back up and you cook the other side. Very clever, simple design. But not perfect. All right, so now we're loaded. We've tested that. We're going to go ahead and plug it in. And we should see it heat up, and hopefully you can see that. Let me carefully turn that. You'll see it's redder down at the bottom than it is up at the top, and that's because heat rises, and they're trying to cook the bread evenly. So let's do it. And I really have no feel for how long this will take. It could be a couple of minutes, but we'll go ahead and let that go. I guess another thing, people in those days, they didn't have to worry about setting off the fire alarm because they didn't have any, which is what happens today when you burn the toast. So, I mean, that's a good thing. I'm not complaining about it. But I am going to try and not burn it just because of that. You probably can't see this from your perspective, but from me looking at it, actually looks like the bread is glowing. Okay, I'm seeing just a small amount of smoke coming out of the top. That's my cue. I'm going to pull it down. Oh, look at that. They both went. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Seeing how the bread is all heated up, I think that's going to go a little bit faster. But we'll see. It's a beautiful old appliance. It's actually got kind of an Art Deco design both on the top and on the sides. All right, so smoke is coming out. Let's see what we got. And I'm going to unplug it. Safety first. And this first side looks quite a bit more toasted than the other side, and I may have pulled that out sooner. But all in all, it looks pretty good. I've got another couple of pieces of bread, and it's nice and warm. So yeah, no automatic timer. You've just got to kind of have a feel for this, and I guess you would burn a few initially. All right, I've got it on again. I'm going to try kind of the same idea. I'm going to let it go until it smokes, but I'm going to give it a few seconds of the smoke coming out. And I wonder if that was in the original instructions, because that would have made sense. Okay, here comes the smoke. Just the first sign of it. I'm going to let it go a little bit longer because I'm hopeful that this will be toasted good. But yeah, you don't want to let it go too far. All right, so I'm going to take it down. That was great. They both flipped. Getting some crumbs on the table, but I guess you would get that anyways with toast. All right. Okay, here it comes. I think we're good. I'm going to unplug it. And I've got my toast. Looks great. Could use some Marionberry jam. Marionberry jam would make that perfect. But other than that, it's great. So again, I thought it would be cool to see how we could bring an old appliance back to life. Safety first. Don't just do this without really thinking it through if you don't have the electrical background. And that's great. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget the little bell if you want to be notified. And I'll see you in our next video.